welcome to the CIH podcast. This is our first episode for 2025, and we're looking forward to what will be an action-packed schedule of podcasts over the coming year for our listeners. And we have a new revamped podcast series. So hopefully you'll be seeing quite a lot of the CIH over the next 12 months. And we're looking forward to you joining us through listening and commenting on what you hear. We have a great group of guests today. I'm John Hannigan. I'm CIH's Chair of the Governing Board, and I'm also CEO of Circle Voluntary Housing Association, which is one of Ireland's largest housing associations. I'm joined today by a great panel of guests. So I'd like to start with Branwen Evans, who is the Chair of the Policy Advisory Committee for CIH, Carol McTaggart, who is the Chair of the Northern Ireland Advisory Board, Jonathan Morris, who is the Chair of the Cymru Board, and also Kath Cottier, who is the Chair of the board in the Republic of Ireland. So you're all very welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say on some of the topics that we're going to cover. Could I ask you just to give everybody just a flavour of what you do in your day jobs to start with? So Branwen, would you like to start us?
So I work for Places of People, and I lead on public policy and environmental sustainability. So I get to think about all those issues, meet lots of people both in and out of the business, and think about how we can do those things better and make things better for our customers and communities. So very lucky.
Thank you, Brown. That's great. Great job and great organisation. So, Carol, over to you.
Thanks, John. I'm the Chief Executive of Clonmel Housing Association, a registered housing association based in Northern Ireland. And I have the privilege of leading an amazing team whose whole focus and job is to deliver and provide homes for everyone to live well.
That's great. Thank you, Carol. Jonathan.
Thank you. I work for Titanian. We're a registered housing association in the Neath Talbot area, so sort of on the M4, just sandwiched between Swansea and Cardiff. I lead on strategic partnerships and external affairs. So I work in that sort of middle ground between the organisation itself and partners like Welsh Government and other bodies.
Thank you, Jonathan. Kath.
Hi, I'm the CEO of Fold Housing here in Ireland. We specialise in older persons housing, and I suppose we're in the middle of writing our strategic plan. So to say what I'm doing at the moment, I'm obsessed by that. And one of the things is trying to kind of, in Ireland, kind of try and combine care and housing to a greater extent than exists at the moment for people in older age. So that's my current obsession, but I've got a wonderful team that does a lot more than that.
That's great, Kath. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for that. That gives us a context of where we all operate and how we operate. And that's going to be really important in this conversation because the nature of the different devolved nation requirements and the governments and the policies and the assemblies that we all work with are quite significantly different at times. So I'm hoping that we're going to get a flavour of that as we go through the conversation today. Just to say that we are not joined today by anybody from Scotland. Unfortunately, Gavin Smith, who was due to join us, who's the chair for CIH Scotland, wasn't able to join us at the last minute. So we look forward to seeing Gavin hopefully again in the future at some point. But where we can, and if you have knowledge, it would be great for you to actually think about and talk about what might be happening in Scotland as well, folks. Okay, so I'm going to move on with our first question. And what I want you to do to set the context for the coming 12 months is to really look back at what happened at the end of 2024 and how you felt that the market, how things were for housing providers, for the work that you're doing. I'd really welcome to get your views on that. So maybe we start with Branwen again on this occasion.
Thank you. I guess if I was to sum up last year, I think the two words would be ambition and uncertainty. And I think we've had a new government come in. They set some really ambitious targets. I think that's very welcome. Some quite big pieces of work kind of felt like they were in a pause. I think we've been in quite a bit of a holding pattern on things like professionalisation, the rent settlement, devolution, and also new questions coming forward. So I think there's a huge amount in there. And I think I'm someone who kind of just wants to get on with things sometimes. And I think it has felt that there's a massive opportunity and also just want to get on a bit. So keen that we sort of move on from that sort of holding pattern last year. But I think what I would take away from the sort of the very tail end was, and I was really pleased to see, was when the government did the plan for change and they sort of restated their missions. And if I'm really honest, I thought the 1.5 million homes, like that would be the chance for them to kind of back away gently from that. And they did not. So I'm really encouraged by that. And I think that's one of the key things that we need to take through into this year.
Great, thanks, Branwen. Yeah, I think there's a couple of really big policy elements coming down the line. We talk about those hopefully in a few minutes. I'm actually going to Kath this time. And Kath, you're in the process of seeing what a new government might look like and what a program for government might look like in the Republic. We're just getting a new government set up. What's your view about how we ended the year?
Hey, I suppose I ended the year, I mean, as a CEO of a housing association and large membership of housing associations in Ireland here. So I think there was a lot to be proud of. Our delivery was very strong over last year. And, the previous year in 2023, social housing delivery was largely provided by housing associations, and that continues. So there's a huge pride in that. And also seeing our sector deliver a new tenure in terms of cost rental, that's really something to be proud of. I suppose there's a lot of big talking elements at the moment. We've got the new Planning Act coming in, the Housing Commission report, which can be a once in a career, your working lifetime, a commission report that can do something big within the sector and take a long-term view. There's also a strategic review by the Department of Housing on the AHB sector that's currently undergoing. So I feel like we're doing a lot of talking. We raise a lot of issues, but I'm just wondering whether and when we'll see some of the results from that will make our life easier and make what we're trying to do for our residents more effective on a longer term view. I think we're responding to crisis, but I would like to see a bit more longer term view of that. So lots to be proud of. Now I sound like a politician. Lots to be proud of, thinking where we've gone, how we're working well within what we've got available to us to do what we're doing, but just that kind of longer term view. I think like to see some of that talking come to fruition.
That's great. Thanks, Kath. And Carol, I'm going to come to you next. In Northern Ireland, we're on the same island as Ireland, but completely different governmental approach, and actually completely different to the governmental approach that's taken in the rest of the UK as well. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how the end of the year was? And we'll get to what the future might look like as well in the next few minutes.
Thanks, John. I suppose maybe I could sum it up by saying it almost was a tale of two halves, because we'd quite a lot at a political level in terms of positives. We had political stability in Northern Ireland after a lengthy period of instability, and we have still a further 2 years of our existing political mandate to go. But for the first time ever, we also had a standalone housing outcome in our draft programme for government, which is currently out for consultation at the moment. And we're very excited about what that might mean in terms of cross-departmental commitment, in terms of putting housing front and centre at the political arena. And we also had the launch of a housing supply strategy, which is committed to 100,000 new homes, of which at least 2,200 of those will be social homes per annum. So we're very, very excited about the political and the housing policy framework. But the negative side of that was we have 48,000 people on a waiting list for a social home. And with a population in Northern Ireland of 1.9 million, those stats are scary. And at the same time, with budget restrictions, our funding programme for the delivery of new social homes was significantly cut at a time when our waiting lists are the highest that they've been in 10 years. So, as I said, it's been a tale of two halves. We also have had some significant issues and challenges at a wider operating environment in Northern Ireland that is also impacting our ability to deliver new social homes, particularly around our water and waste infrastructure. And I've no doubt we'll all get on to talk about the impact of planning and its process and its expediency and around some of our challenges. But certainly for me, I do feel that I'm very ambitious and positive for what housing could look like in 2025.
That's great, Carol. Thank you very much. And I would agree there's quite a lot to do. We'll come back to that planning issue in a few minutes' time. Jonathan, Wales. Again, on the same island as Branwen, but completely different approach in some respects, and but similar difficulties in terms of crisis from a housing perspective.
Absolutely. I think Branwen's comment of ambition and uncertainty sort of sums up 2024. Having said that, I think we ended on a very positive note. There was a degree of political uncertainty and political instability within Wales, which then resolved itself. But it did mean that we had and we now have a new cabinet secretary. But and things like the Renting Homes Act, which is a major piece of housing legislation within Wales, not without its difficulties, but has bedded down. Likewise, the infrastructure around homelessness, certainly following the pandemic. But, and there's been a but in all these comments, hasn't there, across the nation. But there are issues. Whilst we very much welcome the uplift of £81 million to the social housing grant budget, which takes the entire budget over £437 million. That's still not enough to ensure the delivery of 20,000 new affordable low carbon homes in Wales, which is the target of Welsh Government by the end of political parliamentary term. So there's question marks. There's question marks, but how do we address that? How do we get to that point after a significant expectation on the housing sector, which has been militated against by forces beyond our control? But these targets, notably affordable homes, and the delivering net zero, another vital, important policy target. Nobody would doubt that. But the uncertainty of well, how are we going to get there? But I think that sums up where we find ourselves at the end of 2025.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan. It was very clear. Although we have different governments in some respects, we have different approaches by government. We have kind of the same issues, don't we? There's issues around infrastructure planning, difficulties around uncertainty on policy at this point. But there is a lot of light at the end of the tunnel by the sounds of what governments are saying. We know that in the south of Ireland, we're looking at 60,000 homes a year being provided over the next 5 years, each year for the next 5 years, and 1.5 million across the UK. It's not quite the same in the north. We don't have the percentages, I think, coming out of the north that we would like to see, or actually probably in Wales either. So the question will be, where will those homes be delivered and how will they be delivered? And I kind of want to bring together two questions then for the next question, folks, if you don't mind. And that is that, there are new governments in place or about to be in place, and what effect are they having so far, and what do they need to do? But also, we also are expecting some really big changes, particularly around planning, house building and delivery, and also other legislation, for example, around the professional standards for the coming 12 months, which is also something that CIH has been very much at the forefront of advocating for. And we're in there trying to mix it with the politicians to advise them on what we think is good for our sectors. So I'd love to get your view on what you think the impact will be on all of these things over the next 12 months or so. So can I start with you maybe, Carol, in the north?
Thanks, John. So maybe the first thing is, so the two documents that I referred to, our housing supply strategy and our draft programme for government, what we're hoping for in the early part of 2025 is that those are now adopted, first of all, which will enshrine in our political framework cross-departmental working and commitment to ensure that the objectives in both of those are actually then enabled to be followed through. And what that might mean then is that hopefully we've also just had announcement of our draft budget, and that's also out for consultation at the moment also. And what we're hoping for at a couple of levels is that collective decision making, not silo decision making, with collective confirmed funding to enable us to deliver the homes that Northern Ireland needs, and a desire, hopefully, that we move beyond an annual budget round to multi-year budgets that would enable us and our development partners working in Northern Ireland to be able to bring certainty into plan better, rather than on occasions what can be a very, very reactive annual house building programme. But alongside that, we do hope what it will bring also is a focus on the residential sector in Northern Ireland in terms of decarbonisation, because one of the difference whilst Northern Ireland as part of the UK jurisdictional framework, but a different political outworking in Northern Ireland, we are the only part that hasn't got a specialised decarbonisation fund, and therefore the CIH in Northern Ireland has been lobbying with our political representatives for the need for some form of public subsidy to decarbonise residential homes in Northern Ireland if we are serious around the environmental impact and the energy efficiency of our homes. And I'm also hoping with all of that, there will be a focus, particularly in Northern Ireland and given our history, that we can move more to a shared society and that we will start to see more homes built without our traditional community background. So I would like to see the delivery of more shared housing schemes. That is also going to be helped in Northern Ireland by the recent adoption of our local councils through their local development plans. Because again, unlike particularly in England, where you would have Section 106 agreements to try to bring forward more social housing in times of housing crisis, we have not had planning gain. And our new local development plans will now have a requirement for all planning applications coming forward for new housing to have up to 20% of those new homes available for social and affordable housing. And therefore we should start to see much more at a strategic planning led mixed tenure homes with a view to then moving beyond the mono tenure, mono economic background, which I think all of us in Northern Ireland really welcome and want to be part of. But all of that has to happen with a positive mindset and a positive will to do better for the people of Northern Ireland. And I do believe that our politicians and those of us who work in the housing sector have the will and appetite to do that together. You know, we do feel, certainly us at CIH in Northern Ireland, we do feel that housing is high in the political agenda. And we want to be seen as a trusted partner for government to enable us to work collaboratively with them to deliver the homes that Northern Ireland needs. But there are challenges. But I suppose I would, John, try to focus on what are our solutions. And we have been working with our elected representatives and our stakeholder partners, trying to explore what those solutions might be. We don't have the answer to everything, but we do feel that if there is a will, there's a way. And we absolutely need, I suppose I would come at it also from a different angle. You know, those 48,000 people on a home, they need those homes now. And we haven't the luxury to sit by. And we have to find solutions. We have to be in solutions mode. And we have to work together to provide those homes. And then coupled with that, a real focus in Northern Ireland is beyond bricks and mortar. What can we do to ensure that homes we build are of high quality and energy efficient, particularly for those on lower incomes, to ensure that they're not being put into fuel poverty? And how can we ensure that our homes are safe? When we've looked over the last number of years of some of the high profile tragic cases, we must learn those lessons and we must ensure that our homes are safe. And then we must ensure that our customers and our tenants who live in our homes have a very valuable say and that we are listening to what they want from us. And then I think together we can move the housing agenda even further up the political agenda.
That's great. Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Jonathan, I'm going to come to you as well next, if you don't mind, on this particular issue, because, you know, again, we have different assemblies, we have different government parliamentary approaches. And on the UK, you know, it isn't a one size fits all in terms of what's being suggested or what's being considered. So what's your point of view on all of those big issues that need to be dealt with, planning, house building, and other legislation that might be coming forward? Where do you see things in terms of Cymru?
Well, certainly, I think we've always had a very luxurious position. Speaking to some colleagues elsewhere in these islands, we particularly within housing, we've always had a close relationship with what was the Welsh office, referring back to ancient history, and then the Welsh Assembly and now the Welsh government. There's always been that closeness and that willingness to work with civil servants, and that's been reciprocated from the civil service itself, and that's certainly something that we value and we hold on to quite dearly. Of course, since 1999, the establishment of what was then the Welsh Assembly, it has been a Labour government, at least a Labour majority coalition government. And for a lot of that history, of course, you've had a government of a different aspect in in Westminster. So it'll be very interesting now in this year to see how that relationship develops between two governments of the same political hue, sharing a very similar ambition, but of course one government that is vastly experienced in terms of being in power or being in the lead within a Welsh context. So what now has become quite a porous political boundary between Westminster and Cardiff Bay? What does that actually mean? So the changes that I think we all recognise is needed and will be coming down the line with planning. Well, how does that come across? How does that feed across into a Welsh context? Any development upon the net zero agenda, although we have very strong and, as I said, ambitious targets to meet within a Welsh context. But how does that UK debate evolve now as those two governments work together? Said that there's been an uplift within funding to the social housing grant programme in a totally different discipline. The First Minister announced or spoke about some very positive talks with Westminster Government around transport, because I think it's recognised that Wales has lost out in transport funding, particularly within the context of HS2, and there seems to be positive discussions ongoing there. Well, will that lead across into the housing agenda as well? Will those positive discussions will maybe, because it's not all about funding, but there is a fundamental question about funding. If we to meet these ambitious targets, what possibly could that unlock? So we'll be watching and hopefully as CIH Cymru participating and advising as a critical friend very closely in the coming year to have an adult conversation about how do we meet the things that we all want to reach. We all want the affordable homes, as Carol has said, desperately needed in Wales as much as anywhere else in the islands. But practically now, when the rubber hits the road, how are we going to get there? And I think that's the question I'd like to unlock with partners now moving forward into the new year.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Branwen, you have as chair of the Policy Advisory Committee, have probably a front seat in terms of looking at and considering some of these big issues that are coming down the line from a UK perspective. Where would you see and how do you feel that the government might actually be able to deliver on these things? And I'd love you to also say a little bit, if you can, about where CIH are in respect to that, because I know that we're sat at the table, particularly in Wales and particularly in Northern Ireland, and to a degree in the south of Ireland as well, where we sit in respect of maybe that critical friend, that influencer in terms of those policies.
Yeah, great question. I think when you think about it, it's all, if you've all been on a roller coaster and when you get into your seat and you're clipped in and the point of no return has gone, and then you go back up. I did a roller coaster system, and you go back and you go up and up and up, and you're looking down more and more and more. You're just waiting for that moment. And I feel like we're in that moment, like what is going to come? And I think this question really brings into focus that timing for me. And I think if I was just to share, back before Christmas, that day that the National Planning Policy Framework was published, and if you're a geek and love planning like I do, it's like brilliant, yes. And it doesn't change anything for anybody now. And that afternoon, some of the senior leadership team place people, we got together and we were filling bags of items to go out to some of our communities. We called them warm packs. And I think it's that real difference between we've got to put in place the foundations for the long term, and we've got to recognise that takes a long time. And actually, we've got customers in dire need right now. So I think we've just got to keep a lot of things in our head at the same time, which is, actually, it takes quite a while to build a house, especially if you don't have planning permission yet. If you're trying to build 500 at one go, the planning permission is not going to be 12 weeks. So what do we start doing now? And also there is an urgency, because if we're going to get to 1.5 homes in anything like my lifetime, we're going to really motor on. But there's motoring, but doing those right steps. And I think it's really important. Or I think about us as advisors and sort of sitting alongside government. I think most of us, like, we're up for the 1.5 and want to help you, and that's what the CIH is about, and other bodies. How do we sit alongside you and keep the momentum up, encourage you to be brave, but also say don't act too quickly just for things right now. some of this will take some time, and how do we let those things kind of come to fruition? And I think one other thing I would just share, a really fun thing that I've had the opportunity to do this year, and they didn't pay me, they didn't know I was doing this to plug this, but I went on a factory visit for a company called Donaldson's Timber Frames last week, and they've got these amazing whizzy robots, and I love a bit of whizzy roboting around. So we went to the factory and we saw them do these things, and it was not just that they can build houses quickly, but I also saw this big machine. It's a shame I can't show people videos of the robots, but they were really packing insulation down into these panelled units so that actually the quality of what you're getting out to your customers is better, if you do it all right. But in order to make that work, it's not really about the robots, because that happens really fast. It's about right from when you think about what is the house I want to build, how do all the different houses sit together in development, you've got to optimize the entire process. And I just think, yes, some people have found the modern methods of construction. It's been a hard road, hasn't it? I mean, we can't deny that. But I just think we've got to keep our eye on our innovation and that long term, and what are the opportunities, because that is where we see the real change. So sort of in the dash to get houses built, I think we've just got to really advise government on that rounded picture, and what does good look like for customers of tomorrow, not just sort of panic.
Absolutely agree with you. Take our time, get it right first time. It's something that we haven't been able to do for quite a period of time, I think, because of the nature of the policies that we've seen across all of the nations, unfortunately. That level of insecurity about what's going to happen and when it's going to be delivered has always been something we've had to try and deal with. Kath, I'm going to come to you in respect to this as well, because in the south of Ireland, a place I know very, very well, while the scale might be slightly different to the rest of the UK, we are still no less in a housing crisis, and we still have a whole range of big things that we need to fix, including how we build the homes, the planning that goes into them, the infrastructure that supports them. What would be your view on what government should be doing in respect to these? And do you think government are actually doing the right thing from the programme for government that you've seen?
So I suppose for listeners out there who kind of aren't every day kind of looking at Irish politics, I suppose every 5 years, everybody goes for an election. That happens in every country. We spend a lot of time working out that we as a sector get the things on the different kind of manifestos of the kind of the parties involved, and you then vote for them. And then you have another process when it comes to programme for government, hoping that the things that you had on the parties that you voted for actually get onto the programme for government. So that's the phase that we're in at the moment. And there was a kind of a draft programme for government only published yesterday. And I suppose that the reality is the two main parties are the same two main parties that have been in government for the last government. So there is a level of continuity there. But at the same time, it's still an opportunity for them to have a bit of an argy-bargy about what's important and what they want to get on. And they need to be able to seem to be the main party that influences. So it's an interesting time, and it's always enjoyable if you're in, just enjoy politics. But what do you get out of it? And I suppose you mentioned, John, that 60,000 homes per year. I mean, to put that in context, they're saying ramp up to that. And the Housing Commission is saying that we needed at least 53,000 per annum if we're going to kind of meet the crisis. And in 2020, we haven't got the numbers for 2024, but in 2023, it was 33,000 homes that were delivered. So the context of what has actually got to be, increased is significant. And I suppose what you're looking for there is actually kind of greater collaboration, because I think it's, the competing really has to stop, and I think the collaboration to be able to kind of get where we need to go. So there's, there is that, so that we can kind of make the most of the opportunities that are available for us, and work together. The planning infrastructure is really important. A lot of things have been held up in judicial review, so it's going to take a long time for that to come into place. So I think the positive thing about having that kind of continuity in government is some of the stuff that was started will hopefully come to fruition. So the planning legislation was enacted. We now need the government ministerial orders to make that happen. Things that will kind of streamline processes, kind of take a longer 10-year view on kind of planning that allows for national objectives to kind of have a good influence on local plans. There's a lot of there in the kind of the infrastructure, and that is in the programme for government, and it's there. But we really do struggle in our country about kind of getting infrastructure over the line, water projects, energy, all sorts of different things, and they need to do that. So there's a lot of kind of promises about that. In terms of some of the practicalities of stuff, like we under the, that we've got a new agency in Ireland called the Land Development Agency, very, very important in terms of freeing up land that will be available for housing. That's their main mandate. They have become developers really in the past, but not in the recent past, because it is about delivery. It is about kind of getting homes for people to live in, but they've been not on kind of underutilized land that's owned by the state. So there is a kind of commitment with that. I'd like to see that kind of come over the line and to work with AHBs to be able to do that. So I think just in terms of kind of some of the things that you can kind of see continuity, there's stuff there about in the programme for government about defects, about kind of, a lot of homes before 2007 weren't built to the quality that we need. That makes them unsafe. It makes them expensive to remediate. And there is some commitments around that. So I'm very, very hopeful. As somebody who lobbied hard for that and to get that kind of over the line, it was just getting to the point where we were being able to see changes in legislation and money in people's pockets to be able to do the work. So that will kind of carry on. I think that's really, really important. In terms of kind of the other thing that I'm hoping for is growth is an obsession by everybody, but our legacy will be how we manage and maintain it. And I think that's where I would like the CIH to focus our work on in terms of kind of the professionalism of our sector, because I don't think we've seen housing as a professional sector as strongly as in some of the other jurisdictions, the devolved nations, UK. I'd really like that to kind of take a lot of focus over the next while, and I think that's where we can support some of the work to kind of make the legacy of what will grow over the next few years. And we might kind of come on and talk about kind of AHB sector and review of the sector, but we could talk for forever, but hopefully that gives you a good view of some of the things that we'd like the government to do, and they are on the programme. We just need to make sure that they're delivered.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kath, for a run through the issues that we're facing in the south of Ireland. One of the things, folks, I'd like you to do, and maybe this might be a little bit controversial, maybe it won't be, is to give me a kind of a one sentence view on whether you think that the policies that are being suggested by the relevant assemblies and government are actually likely to meet the targets that you think they've set themselves. So maybe we start with Branwen, because you're looking at it from a policy advisory perspective. Is the government, do you think it can do what it says it's going to do?
So I want to say no, but I don't want to start with the negative. But I'm very bad at speaking in one sentences, but I would just, I think I've got this little question.
Make it a long sentence.
It's going to be a really long sentence. I've got a little post-it on my desk, and it has the question that some Olympic rowers used to ask themselves when they decided what they were doing. And the question is, will it make the boat go faster? And I always now look at things, I'm like, will it make the boat go fast enough? And when I look at all the things that government are doing, I think, yeah, that's some good stuff. That's all lovely. Is it going to be enough? And I think it's about, if we take the sum of all the parts, is it going to be enough? And I don't think we're there yet. I think this is why we've got this window of opportunity. And I think I've worked in housing for literally decades now, and maybe I've got a few decades to go. But this could be it for some of us. And I think we need to get this across to the politicians. This is their moment. It's probably most of our moments who've had a career in this. This literally coming 3 to 6 months could be the one really big opportunity we have in our working lives to make a difference. So we've got to grab it. We've got to take everything to the max. We can still do that, but we've really got to go for it. And I think whether government are going to do enough is sort of on them and on us to help them in the next few months make that happen.
Brilliant. Thank you, Branwen. Carol, I'm going to ask you the same question.
I think for the first time we've got the right policy framework through the fact that we've now got a standalone outcome in our programme for government, which gives that collective cross-departmental commitment and the housing supply strategy. So I think we've got the right framework. I also think we've got the ambition from our elected representatives, because housing is now front and centre of quite a lot of conversations right across the whole gambit of the operating environment in Northern Ireland. I was at an event yesterday and to hear business people start to talk about we need more social housing in Northern Ireland. So we've got the right policy framework, but what we need to support that is a solutions focused approach to help us unblock those issues that are going to impact the delivery of those objectives. And that includes for us in Northern Ireland a radical review of the funding for Northern Ireland Water, so that we absolutely can find a way to have the growth that Northern Ireland needs, not just for a housing point of view, but all it's impacting the delivery and growth of our region, but also a review of our planning system, and as importantly, adequate multi-year funding. So I think the political framework is now there, John, that we've never had. We have absolutely high on the political agenda and people talking about housing. And I think once you've got the elected and the wider stakeholders talking about housing and the need for it, and I do think now we have the ambition. We just got to make it happen, and we've got to be solutions focused, and we can't be derailed in any way.
Thank you very much, Carol. Jonathan, what do you think?
No, and that's not me saying that. In terms of the target of 20,000 new affordable carbon sustainable homes within the term of the Welsh Government, it's not Jonathan Morris saying no, it's the Welsh Audit Report saying no, for very good reasons. Targets are great. We need targets. We need clarity of direction and expectation of delivery, and there is absolutely no issue in those targets being stretching. However, life happens, and no initial plan survives initial contact, and things have to be flexible and maneuverable without losing sight of the overall goal. But there does need, I think, to be some pragmatism, because we are dealing with complex issues. I'd be the very first to big up the housing profession. All of us are professionals. Why are we professionals? Well, because we deal with complex issues. Dare I say, it is rocket science. Housing is very complex in its nature, and that's not just about the social sector. That's housing as a system. I think that's vitally important to remember. So certainly when look on UK governments, again, very ambitious, and we praise them for that. Very ambitious targets. But what really are the policy goals? I think we do need a little bit more clarity on that. Is it simply the provision of housing, which is great in and of itself, and none of us would disagree with that, given the problems of housing our communities, not by one stretch, but reflecting on the conversation that we've had just past, getting things right. This needs a system-wide strategy of housing. So, for example, if we're going to build that many homes, then that links to growth. That's an investment within whatever area, whether it's Wales, whether it's the UK, Scotland, Ireland. It's an investment within the housing system. Now that can create jobs, training, skills. We are part of the foundational economy. So, it's not beyond our ken, both in terms of government and as housing professionals, to make those links, so that if we do achieve these targets, and I ideally hope that we do, that by turning the cog here of the need for affordable housing, for instance, it turns another cog, which is about economic investment, which certainly towns, and I'm speaking to you from one, Port Talbot, that is under immense economic pressure at this moment in time, desperate for jobs and investment. You turn that one cog and it turns the other cog. So targets by date have an inherent weakness. They're good in principle, but it's more important that we get it right, and that we address housing as a system, rather than the understandable, the absolute understandable pressure to build more homes for people. But there's so much more we can achieve as a sector as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. Kath, I'm actually going to let you off this question. Given that we're just forming a government now, and that we're just about getting some of the policies, there's still some uncertainty, but that hope and that wish that we get that continuity from the previous 5 years may be just a very positive thing to do. So I'm going to just wrap up, folks, actually, with one final question for you that you might think about. And I'm going to give this question probably to Kath, actually, given that I'll let you off the last one. And that is, The CIH, you're chair of the board of the CIH in the Republic of Ireland. What should be the ambitions for CIH for the next 12 months?
So I suppose our membership has grown significantly in Ireland from quite a low base. We're in a development phase, and we're building our offer. And I suppose what we really want to be is a really important resource for our members to establish and grow their careers, and to kind of really celebrate kind of housing as a career, so that we can kind of show the impact of what we do. But I really would like our members to see our longer term plan in Ireland, so they're invested in what we can achieve for the housing sector, so what the CIH can achieve to strengthen our voice, and make an impact. So I suppose, what I said earlier about growth in Ireland has to be balanced with professional housing management, our work in supporting communities, and crucially property and asset management. And that is, I think, we in a housing association sector, we developed a really, really strong property and asset management sector over the last few years. That needs to be kind of replicated in the local authority, kind of some of the work that they're able to do. They don't have the same funding streams as we do, so that's actually one of the biggest barriers for them in terms of being able to do that as well as they would like. So I do think that there's kind of to be a voice for some of those ones that will enable us to ensure that kind of legacy, is where I would like us to see. I'd like to see us to strengthen and learn and collaborate more with the nations of the UK, because I think there's an awful lot that we're doing in Ireland here that is a product of our ability to be flexible, a smaller country, and able to kind of bring that. So I would like to see us have more of a profile within the CIH, so that we can bring and share more.
That's great, thank you. Branwen, I'm going to go to you next from a policy perspective on CIH. What ambition should we have?
Let's believe we can do it. I think I'm not here to work for a housing association. I'm here to do the things the housing associations do. And I think, we maybe need to think about how we're all moving on and how is our role changing in communities. And I absolutely, as Jonathan said earlier, the house is at the heart of a whole range of communities. I think we really need to get out and think, what are all the things that government's doing and how do we bring them all together and how do we get into those different housing policies? So from the Policy Advisory Committee perspective, let's look at the evidence, the different things. And I always think of it really simply, like what's happening on land, what's happening on money, what's happening on planning. And if we get the different policies in those areas right, and we really get into this and think about how do they all come together, land, my big thing is, why is government saying, do more, find this, that and the other? They've got loads of land. Why aren't they releasing it and helping us get things built on that, houses specifically built on that land? Money, okay, they don't have limited money. They've given us land, that would help. But then why can't we get into the new finance frameworks and new innovative ways of doing things? So I see energy and housing is getting closer and closer together. You can't take that infrastructure apart. So why don't we say, if you bring someone's energy bills down to zero, you can impact on the rent and you can sort of have a risk and reward share. Let's get into that conversation. And planning, they have done a lot on planning, but when we get into the devolved authorities in England, what's all that going to mean? How do we just help? How can I want to see those mayors supercharge us. I do not want to see those mayors having us in meetings for 3 years discussing things. I think as Carol said earlier, let's not just talk and talk, let's get stuff done. And the final thing, this is something Kath said actually, is about that legacy. And none of this happens magically by robots. There's a huge element of people in this. And I do not understand why we do not do more. I'm sort of myself here as well. Why aren't we training up the people in our communities to get their own homes fixed? And obviously that's not the whole answer, but getting more people on that skills journey, because actually most of the things that need to happen in houses will not be done by robots. They will be done by the people who need to do that. So I think skills and building that legacy so we've got sustainable change is really important. And then as we bring all that together, I think our voice is really important to just really maybe be a bit of grit in the oyster, work really well together, and as part of that maturity of that relationship, be a bit brave in saying actually that doesn't work, or could we push harder, and being we're all grown-ups and we've got to be really grown up if we're going to really change the dial on this.
Thank you, Branwen. Jonathan, you talked about being the critical friend. What do you think our ambition should be in CIH in Wales?
Well, I think that there's a number of things, critical friend being part of them. I think certainly a key element for that is professionalism. It looks like it's going to take a slightly different route to what's happened in England. But nonetheless, I think at every single opportunity, we should shout from the rooftops that we are a profession. We have professional standards. We can prove that through the training and qualifications program of CIH itself, and encourage, despite the lack of mandatory need within Wales, but encourage at every single opportunity anybody who has an interest and skin in the game within housing to get those qualifications, to become a recognised professional, which is valued beyond us. We pride ourselves, don't we, in those letters after our name. They mean something.
They do indeed. They do. Thank you, Jonathan. And Carol, I'm going to give you the last word on this one. You are effectively the voice of CIH in the North. You've done a fantastic bit of work with over the last number of months, and actually over the last number of years, with the political system. Where do you think we should be in the North in terms of CIH, and what should we be doing for the next 12 months?
So I think again, there's two aspects to that. I think in Northern Ireland we've got a really good, long-standing member base. And I think, if you look at all of the different jobs that are in housing, as a professional body, we've got such a wide range of membership in terms of the type of jobs that they do in housing. And I don't think that there, on occasions, is as much as awareness of that as there should be. And I think, there are a couple of things for me, is listening to our members and ensuring that we are able to respond to them in terms of the support and training that they need to help them do their jobs. The world has changed as we know it in the last 3 to 4 years, and how we do our jobs is differing every day. So we've also, as a professional body, got to keep up with the support that we can offer our membership. And we also have to hold our head high and accept that working in housing is a privilege and a very valuable public service. And I think it's important that we, all of us, are proud to be professional, and we should be encouraging others to think about housing as a career, because for many of us who've worked in housing, we've had very, very rewarding careers. And I do think there's something around for our members, and some of the jobs in housing are very, very tough. When I look at what housing officers or asset officers do, they have a very tough job. And it is for us as a professional membership body to be there to hold them in high regard and to pick them up when things are tough and give them the tools that they're needed to do the job that we're asking them to do. But alongside that, particularly in Northern Ireland, Chartered Institute of Housing does want to be the voice of housing. And we do want to be a trusted partner for government. And we do feel that working in collaboration, raising those issues, coming to the table with some solutions and working those through together, we can hold our members in high regard and remind everybody that housing is a great career. We can make a valuable contribution at a societal level, and that they absolutely should be right to be proud to be professional.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Carol. And thank you all of my guests here today. You have been fantastic. You've really been very interesting in terms of the solutions that you've put forward, but also the challenges that you have very clearly recognised for us as a housing sector and for us as CIH. And really do thank you for all the work you've done, particularly in terms of the chairing of the different boards and committees. Thank you very much for everything you've done for us as CIH. And thank you for today's podcast. I also want to thank everybody for listening and for tuning in. Our next podcast will be up on our website very shortly, as will this on the YouTube channel. So please do go and listen to it. And my special thanks to Emma Elston for her support and the help in producing this podcast. Hope you found it interesting, and we look forward to your feedback and comments on the content and the topics that we've covered. Talk to you again soon. Thank you.